Good afternoon. Thank you. Today I'm going to be talking about standing out and standing up. And that first part, the standing out part, is really relating to what I was talking about last year, which is making the Scottish Family Party more visible. So last year I talked about things like the flags that we produced, the placards that we have, the hoodies and the t-shirts and things like that. We're a relatively new party, and so many people wouldn't have heard of us. And getting our name out there and getting people familiar with our policies is important. One of the things that I asked people to do was to take the flags up a Monroe and get a photo. And this is something that Kenneth has done. He's taken them up a mountain, got some photos of that. These are things that we might use in like a party election broadcast or something like that. Ideally, we'd like to get kind of video footage of these kind of things, maybe a drone, circling around one of these things, something like that might provide the intro to a party election broadcast. Now, towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, the issue which kind of grabbed the public attention was the Gender Recognition Reform Bill going through the Scottish Parliament. And we first began to hear of a protest that LGBT groups were holding outside the Parliament. And it was very last minute, but we decided to go along. We grabbed maybe about 10 people. I don't know if it was like 24 hours or 48 hours notice. Richard got down there with his placard. We got down there with a few flags, a few other placards as well. And lots of those pictures ended up getting in the press. But one in particular that got in the press was this one. All of us had gone off to have a cup of tea, and Richard was like, oh, I want to hang around, see if I can get another interview with the press or something like that, or maybe just chat to folk out there. And while he was chatting to one of the ladies there, this photo was taken. And it ended up on the front pages of different papers and the BBC and things like that, often as a thumbnail or something like that, But it really summed up what a lot of people were thinking. We heard earlier that people have said, I can't believe that you can actually say that. But there you've got Richard. He's looking fairly reasonable and thoughtful. and making what seems to be quite a reasonable statement to many people. And there's somebody with a trans rights kind of placard telling him off, no, you can't say these things, And I think lots of people saw that. They saw about, the Isla, is it Isla Bryson? That the rapist going to a female prison. And many people would see that and they think, I agree with the man with the woolly bobble hat. And we followed this by a much bigger protest. And this was with the help of Scottish Cabby. And many other groups came to this as well. So there were suffragettes, there was some sort of unionist organisation, and there was us out there with our Scottish Family Party flags. And when we're out there, we're actually, making ourselves known to people who are upset about the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. We're saying, we are the party that utterly rejects this. The Conservatives are kind of like, well, we're not too sure about some of the details of this, but we're saying this is nonsense. We completely reject this policy. And so we're making ourselves known to all the people that hold the same view. And we had speakers there. We had Arthur O'Malley speaking. We had Niall Fraser also speaking, and Richard spoke, and many others spoke from different organizations. Another thing I encouraged people to do was to get a table and get some flags, get out and make the Scottish Family Party known. Somebody who's been incredible at doing that has been Leo. Leo's been out in Glasgow with his gazebo, pulling in lots of volunteers. If there's a protest going on, then he'll be out at the protest as well, or counter-protesting, or joining with a protest, and then pulling in people to help as well. Now, the good people of Denny, they contacted us. They were shocked to see what was being taught in their primary schools. And they'd met with the headmaster. The headmaster had kind of, brushed it off and we won't change anything. And so they said, we don't feel completely confident about going out and speaking ourselves, but could we have some speakers from the Scottish Family Party to come and join with our local protest against what's being taught in our primary schools? So this happened outside the library in Denny. Actually, when we got there, they all wanted to speak. We couldn't get them off the microphone. They were, there were some great speakers there, but it was great to stand with them. And again, we're saying, as a Scottish Family Party, we stand with you for what you're standing for. Now, where this sex education material gets administered from is actually this place, the Sandyford Clinic. When you look at the contact details on the rsp.scot material, it comes back to a gender clinic in Glasgow, here in Glasgow. It's a gender clinic, an abortion clinic as well. And you've heard how the Tavistock Clinic in London is being closed down. And Niall thought this one should be closed down too. So symbolically, we bricked up the Sandyford, and that was in the newspapers as well. And we had a good crowd of people from the Family Party out there as well. And then we've had, we had our big protest. It was actually before the last conference where we were out by the Parliament putting the Scottish sex education materials on the Parliament building. That's now been seen by over 40,000 people, making them aware of what's in that material. People were asking, what about education? Maybe the answer is that we need to get children out of these schools. And Neil organised a conference at the end of last year, Unite for Scottish Education, Unite for Education. And this was a conference for people from who are setting up faith-based schools or Christian schools, people doing homeschooling. And we had speakers from the Scottish Family Party there. It wasn't a Scottish Family Party event, but many people who were speaking were kind of from the Scottish Family Party. And there again, we're saying, we stand with you in what you're standing for. We're with your community. And there may be communities that you know, that you have a special interest in. Why not organize an event that brings people from that community together? And maybe just have one speaker from the party, from the Scottish Family Party there, or something like that. We've also wanted to highlight things which are happening in local communities, and so it's not just the schools which are having a problem, the universities are having a problem as well. And so there's a group in Edinburgh University called Edinburgh Academics for Academic Freedom, and they wanted to put on a film called Adult Human Female, but that upset the LGBT groups there. And so they had a massive protest from students, from the Cabaret Against Hate Speech and other groups, and they blockaded the lecture theatre which this film was meant to be shown in. And Edinburgh University said, oh, actually, we don't think that it can be shown safely, so we've got to call off the screening. But we managed to get out there, and Richard filmed a kind of a news report of what was going on there. And so we're saying to the Edinburgh academics that we stand with you for freedom of speech and for academic freedom. We've had lots of other tables in different parts of the country. This one was in South Lanarkshire. This one was in Stranraer. I quite like this table when I look at this photo. A great location, really kind of nicely arranged table. It's not super provocative. It's just got Family Party logo, Scottish Family Party. People get to know the logo, and they come and they can walk up to the table. We've had events at the Fife Show and other shows, and summer events across the country. And this is a table we set up in the Meadows. That sign, "A man can't become a woman," didn't last too long that time before it got thrown up a tree. We got it back. It's okay. Then we've had our by-elections. And this was the by-election up in Dice. When we have a by-election, everyone piles in to help. Thanks to everyone who's been out and doing that. And then Niall has talked about Rutherglen. We had such a great group of people out there in Rutherglen. Everyone just pulled together. So great to see that whole kind of high street, taken over, and us standing shoulder to shoulder with other parties that were there, and in some sense, having the most presence as well. So that's what I mean when I say standing out. That might be there with your family party hoodie on, your family party flag, a placard or something, or speaking in public. And you can have a lot of confidence there because you'll be with people who are believing and share the same values. You're standing there as part of a crowd. But now I want to talk about standing up. And that's standing up. That's what happens in our workplaces, in our churches. It's what happens in our schools. Often there might be nobody standing up in those places. And there's things which are going on there, which are the exact opposite of maybe what we stand for as a party. And something I believe is that you shouldn't let what you know to be good to be spoken of as evil. And I think I want the people in the Scottish Family Party to be the ones that raise their hand. The Emperor's New Clothes, there's a child that raises their hand and says, there's something not right going on here. That's who we have to be. And as a party, we get to hear people who are doing this. We can't always share the details of what goes on, but because people see us standing out, they reach out and tell us about situations. And I can share the situation. I can't share all the details, but we heard of a head girl, and she was asked by one of her fellow pupils. The pupil asked her and said, the people found out that she was a Christian and said, well, what do you believe about homosexuality? She said, well, I believe that sex is for marriage between one man and one woman, and I believe that everything outside of that is wrong. It's not what we were made for. And so he followed that up with another question. He said, well, what do you think about pedophilia? And she said, well, I think that's wrong as well. And then rumors started to spread about her through her year group. And it came to her 18th birthday party. And there were 13 people that were invited. And on the day of the party, none of them turned up. They'd all were too afraid to come. They'd all sort of abandoned her. And the school, rather than defending their head girl and defending religious freedom, decided to interrogate her. They had several sessions where she was interrogated. The last one lasted 3 hours. On one occasion, she was asked, so do you believe that homosexuality and pedophilia are the same thing? She said, no, I've never said that. I've said, just as a Christian, that I believe that sex is for marriage between one man and one woman, and everything outside of that is wrong, whether that's, pedophilia or homosexual sex. That I believe both those things are wrong, but they are not the same thing. And so the headmaster followed that question up and said, well, don't you support the Pride movement then? And she said, no, I don't support the Pride movement. And for Christians, Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. So Christians, probably can't support a movement which is based on pride. And so then he said, how can you say you're not discriminatory if you do not support the Pride movement? And then he followed this up. How can you match this with your medical ambition? The girl wanted to train to be a doctor when she left school. And so now he was calling into question whether she could be a doctor and hold Christian views of marriage and sex and these kind of things. And so the night after that 3-hour conversation, she was called to be told she could no longer be the head girl of the school. The following Monday was a celebration of the founder of the school. And it would be a day on which normally the head girl and the head boy would give a speech. But this year, the head girl had never been even asked to plan to give a speech because all these interrogation things had been going on beforehand. And so, ironically, in this situation, this school was set up by a founder who said, I'm setting this school up for the glory of God. And now they were in a situation where they were demoting their head girl because of her Christian belief. We had another member who, in his workplace, they were asked to complete compliance training. And this would be something every year they have to go through. It would be like bribery training, lots of very valid things. But coming into that training, year by year, there would be more sort of things to do with kind of social justice and things like that. And this one year, there was a question which basically said, you need to advise other people. It asks you, what would you do if somebody came out as being transgender and was asking for their pronouns to be used? And this person couldn't get on to the next question without putting the right answer in. And the right answer was that you advise everyone to use these pronouns. And this person, because of their faith, they said, that's not something that I do. They said they'd be happy to use the person's new name, or they'd agree to use the person's new name. But if they were using these pronouns, they were basically saying that a genuine change of sex had actually happened. They said they weren't prepared to do that. But in a multiple choice question, they couldn't put that nuance in. And so they decided not to answer that question. And they went to the HR and said, I can't complete this compliance training because I can't advise people to do something that they wouldn't do themselves. And the HR had to think about that for a long time. And eventually they came back and they said, we'll let you off from doing this question for this year. And so the next year, the compliance training came out again, and the same question was in there. And so the person thought, well, what's happening this time? But this time they were more bold. And they told the HR that multiple UK court cases have shown that gender-critical views are a protected philosophical belief, just as much as LGBT is a protected characteristic. They said that the Allies program in this workplace is discriminatory because allies are never asked for people with socially conservative values, yet they're discriminated against by being banned from venues, by having their bank accounts frozen, and these kinds of things. And so LGBT groups are asking workplaces to set up these allies programs, but then in the public spaces, you've got prominent LGBT activists calling people with socially conservative values Nazis. And so that you have this kind of Nazis and allies thing, which is going on. And this kind of language is not inclusive, it's divisive. The person had previously asked if a Christian fellowship group could be set up. And the head of HR had thought about it and said, I think if a group were to be set up, it would have to be a group for people of all faiths and none, because belief is the protected characteristic. And so this person then applied to be a leader within the Pride group and said that the Pride group was not representing the protected characteristic of sexuality because the views of heterosexuals need to be represented as well as LGBT. And the views, socially conservative views of sex, need to be represented as well as progressive ones. And gender-affirming views of transsexuality, as well as gender-critical views, also need to be represented. In each of these cases where these people stood up, there were people that came out to support them, who came privately and said, yes, I support that stand that you made, and often very prominent, very important people. When we stand in these ways, we will find who the people are who are the natural kind of allies of the Scottish Family Party. Well, you may be saying, if I stand, I fear losing my job. But what does it profit you if you keep your job, but you lose your nation? When people reveal that they are standing for the Scottish Family Party at election time, we want all the people around them to be able to say, I've seen them stand in private. I know that if they stood in the Parliament, they would be able to represent me well. As a party, we are not standing against people. We're not making people our enemies. We want to win people. We want to win the people who are often opposing us. But we do have to stand against these ideologies. There was a famous military general who once said, he said, the enemy is behind us. The enemy is in front of us. The enemy is to the right. The enemy is to the left of us. He can't get away this time.